Hey, good evening. It's Rob from Speakers Corner UK and sometimes co-host of the Gin and Tonic Show. Wanted to welcome those who are here this evening. I thought it would be a useful idea to clarify some thoughts and some confusion that I've noticed since putting up the videos from Speakers Corner this past Sunday. So a quick bit of background. I went down to Speakers Corner on Sunday past, had a couple of conversations, spoke to some people. All the conversations are up on my channel at the moment. And at one point, there was a conversation that I was having. Well, I was kind of listening more than speaking with Will, who's another atheist there, Redhead Will. And this Muslim lady came over and initially came to speak to me, and Will came and stood next to me, and he sort of had more of the conversation. I let him speak, and it sort of talked about morality, and there were a couple of other people standing around there as well, and they got involved, and we were all talking about morality, and there's the theistic version of morality, and then there's the naturalist version of morality, if you want to call it that. And so that sort of conversation was going on, and Will was sort of mostly talking there at that time. And then sort of out of the side, Suboor came over with a number of his cameras, well, a number of cameras following him. And Will saw him, and Suboor came up and said, you're making claims, etc. And of course, he wasn't making claims per se. He was talking about morality. Now, he may have made a claim in the morality, and Will decided he didn't want to engage with Suboor, which then proceeded to have Suboor, perform and do what he did. So I put the video up there, and I said, "Is this how a Muslim behaves?" And of course, I was well aware that I would get a fair amount of backlash, in inverted commas, from some Muslims. Although, to the credit, there's some Muslims that have also gone, you know what, that behavior was unacceptable. If the point of a discussion is to have an intellectual discussion. Now, I want to clarify the difference between what somebody like Suboor was doing there and from a heckler and a clown, because one of the comments that was made was, well, hey, Rob, you seem to be disingenuous. You're being, you're not being fair across everybody. There's people that do all kinds of things in Speaker's Corner. So why are you unfairly picking on Suboor when other people, sometimes act like a clown or do whatever they do? And my first response is that there are a few hecklers in Speaker's Corner, and there's a few people that behave in whatever way they behave. There's a number of differences that I want to bring to the table so people understand the difference. Now, you may or may not agree, that's fine, but I'm going to give you my view on this, and that is that Suboor is supposedly recognized as a serious speaker, in inverted commas. Certainly Muhammad Hijab and other people think so. So if that's the case, then of course that's, I'm guessing, how you want to be perceived. Now, if you want to be a heckler or a bit of a clown, that's all fine. People aren't going to take that seriously. So there's those people that wander around in Speaker's Corner. I don't take them seriously, neither does anybody else. Nobody cares if they shout, make chicken noises, stand on their head, do whatever they want to do. But if you're coming down, then that was the question that I asked him at Hijab. Do you come down here? Is truth important? What is your reason for coming down here? And you can see that in the video I did. And so from that perspective, if your purpose is to come down there and have an honest, open, intellectual conversation, then behaving in that way, I believe, is contrary to that sort of conversation taking place. Now, regardless of what Will did or didn't do, and of course today we've had another video that's been uploaded that carried on from where my video sort of stopped, and we see Suboor chasing Phil around and shouting at him and trying to egg him on, in a sense. And I asked the question of some Muslims, and as I say, to their credit, some Muslims have actually said, well, do you know what, yeah, that wasn't great behavior. And so the purpose was to go, hey, if you're there for that purpose, then this is contrary to having a good intellectual discussion. And so if you're going to behave that way, then I'm going to expose that. If I did that, then somebody can expose that at me and go, hey, Rob, you say that you want to come down and have, honest, open conversations, but here you are acting like a clown. And I would go, okay, I apologize. And actually, just to show I'm not perfect, and I think everybody knows that anyway, but there was an occasion, probably about 3 or 4 months, 5 months, I don't know, a long time ago, where I had a conversation with Ali Dawa, and then there were some people there. And I actually did get frustrated. It's one of the few times in Speaker's Corner where I was frustrated, because from my point of view, Ali was spouting some of the normal script that he normally does. He to me, hadn't learned anything. We'd had a number of discussions, and he said various things. And so I got frustrated. and there was another Muslim that's there that's actually quite an intellectual Muslim, as it happens. He doesn't go on camera very often. And he pointed this out to me, and he said, Rob, you're getting a bit frustrated and emotional. And I kind of dismissed his concern because I was frustrated in that moment. When that conversation finished, immediately I thought about it, and I went, you know what? I was a bit of an arse in that conversation. I was frustrated. I didn't behave in a negative way, but it was like I was very dismissive of Ali in a way that I wouldn't normally be. Now, some people go, okay, Rob, you should be dismissive, but that's not the point. I was dismissive, and I could feel, that there was some emotionality from my point of view. So I went over to this guy who had pointed it out, and I immediately apologized. I said, you know what? That was not the way I would normally want to have it. And he said, you know what? No problems. I understand that if somebody's, saying silly things, we can do it. We just do it in an intellectual way. And I went, you know what? That's right. And then I went over to Ali and I apologized to him. I don't know if he'll ever remember this, but I went over and said, you know what? I was frustrated with some of the things you were saying, and I apologize. So it happens to everybody. And I think one of the major things for me is, if something happens, apologize. But I'm not going to go out of my way on purpose, particularly to make somebody look foolish. I always say that. You'll probably hear it in my videos, and I say that often to people there. My purpose to going down to Speaker's Corner is not to make somebody look foolish or to call them out. It's trivially easy to go down there and make somebody look foolish. You study up on a topic, you go ask some questions, and then you can make them look foolish. This is not an intellectual approach from my position. And I think most honest Muslims, or anybody for that matter, would agree with that. So that's the position that we're in with regards to this. Now, there were a number of comments that came up, and this is part of the reason why I want to talk about this as well, because there were comments that came up about, I want to share my screen here, so let me see if I can bring it up. Here we go. So here is some of the things that I want to cover, particularly with this. Number one, there was confusion between free speech and slander and behavior. I have no problem. There's free speech, the right to express any opinion without censorship or restraint. And slander, couple of Muslims have decided that, if you say certain things about the Prophet that they think is not true, this relates to slander, and perhaps we'll get into that a bit later. But slander is the action or crime of making a false or spoken statement damaging to a person's reputation. And we can definitely come back to that particular point. But my intention is not to limit anybody's free speech, and I was surprised that there were a few comments from people that I thought, would have known better or would have been more clear on knowing the difference. Somebody can say whatever they like in Speaker's Corner, but I and anybody else have the right to point out if that behavior or speech is contrary to having a good, open discussion. Now, you can claim that's my opinion. That's absolutely fine. That's my free speech. So in no way am I trying to derail or prevent somebody from having free speech, but I am going to point out what I consider to be behavior that's contrary to having that good conversation. And I wanted to show you, it may be very small here, so you might have to make your screens a lot bigger, but here were some of the comments, and this is why I thought this would be useful as well. And some of them don't have the names next to them necessarily, but the first comment says, Speaker's Corner UK, hey Rob, what's wrong with his behavior? So here was somebody going, hey, what's wrong with Suboor's behavior? The next one says, I think Rob is respectful and loves civil debates, but Suboor just mocked Will to try and get him to talk to him. And I don't see anything wrong with this at Speaker's Corner because I've seen this for years. So this particular commenter thinks that it's okay to mock somebody to try and get them to talk to them because he's seen worse. So, because he might have seen worse, that justifies this sort of behavior. Another person said here, Will left and Suboor mocked him a little. I failed to see the problem with this. And so those first three comments, and then a commenter actually did respond to this person and said, every time a Muslim does something, it always comes across as a footnote. It was just a little, misunderstood. Then the Quran says, I'm peaceful despite my actions, etc. When a non-Muslim does something, footnotes are inadmissible. So in another way of putting that, it's okay when Muslims do it because, hey, it's just a little bit of fun, etc. But when it happens the other way around, oh my word, then people are getting up. So let's be consistent here. And I'm going to show you that I'm consistent. Something will come up just now where I will show you the consistency. There was another one here from one of my regular critics. So thank you, Matt. Rob, I know this has upset you, and I also know that you'll be looking for blood and your pound of flesh from the Muslims. Okay, that's obviously his inference without any basis, but that's kind of a regular thing that happens. So people make claims, they have an inference, so they in their own mind they're justifying things, but they can't actually link it to anything. So that's fine. That's his subjective opinion. It's just a little bit of banter from all of these Speaker's Corner, and Suboor wasn't malicious or offensive. I'm sure Will's ego will bounce back in no time. So again, this is from one of my Muslim critics. Would he say the same if it was the other way around? Imagine that Will had done what what Suboor done to Will to maybe that lady or one of the other perhaps not so intellectual Muslims that were standing around there, and they had walked away. I'm sure the Muslims would not have been happy. So what I'm asking for here is to be consistent. If you care about truth and you do think that intellectual debate is what you're looking for. Now, if you are a Muslim who goes, hey, I want to see the verbal battleground, I don't care what they say, it's almost like as long as they don't physically hit each other, it's okay. That's fine, that's your opinion. But don't have a conversation with me, because you and I are on different levels. As far as I'm concerned, that's kindergarten playground stuff. It might be entertaining on occasions. That's my personal opinion. Other people might like it, but it's not the way I'm going to behave, and I'm going to call that out if I see it. So, and if somebody else wants to call out intellectual discussion because they don't like that, that's fair enough. They can do that too. And the last comment here is, hey, Speaker's Corner, to clarify, don't support the way he acted, as I know it's not how a Muslim, excuse me, a Muslim should act. My point is that there are many people in Speaker's Corner who act in worse ways than this. I've not seen you ever try to character assassinate them. This shows it's personal with you and Suboor, since he totally annihilates you, followed by a burial. It's funny to see that you're still butthurt about it, and that you let your emotions get the better of you. So there's just a small handful of the comments, because I'm always interested in reading some of the comments. Again, some of them, you know, I put on some reasonable ones here. There's a lot more on there that just wasn't worth wasting one's time on. But the whole point here is that, and one of the commenters there brought it in, is that it's okay. Hey, this is not really okay, but you know what? Will ran away. That's much worse than somebody behaving like a chicken or a clown. So let's focus on Will, because whatever my Muslim brother did, that's okay. It's just a little bit of banter. Swing that around. Imagine it was the other way around. Oh my word, you wouldn't hear the end of it. So what I'm asking for is some consistency here, and let's recognize that behavior is not the sort of thing that we want to have in Speaker's Corner, or maybe it is. And if you think that is good with, perfect. Just don't bother speaking to me. You're wasting my time. That's not what I'm there for. And I return you to, for those who know, go and look on my channel. I've got Polite Hamza. So if you know Polite Hamza, there's a couple of videos I did with him. Now, we can disagree. I may think that he, you know, is wrong on many things, but if you go and watch that, I submit to all of you who's watching here, that's the sort of conversation that we should be having in Speaker's Corner, where there's not this whole ego thing. If you listen to him, he actually had a really good beginning part. Hey, you know, we're not walking encyclopedias, you know, I respect Rob, etc. And it makes it just a much more friendly and open sort of conversation can take place. And we did that on video as well. So it's very disarming. It allows you, and when we had the conversation, we allowed each other finish, and, you know, we can disagree every single point, but he's the sort of person I'd sit down at the table with and have more conversations, because he does it in a way that's intellectually honest. Now, when I approached Muhammad Hijab, even he kind of admitted, a little bit begrudgingly, kind of, sort of, that behavior of Suboor's wasn't okay, but then he immediately wanted to focus on Will, quote, running away. And now we've seen the entire video. I haven't asked Will specifically why he did so. Maybe I will next week. And it's his personal choice to do that. Now, just to be clear here, I'll come back to that in a moment. Actually, no, I won't. I'll do this now, because we can carry on with this. I want to, for those people who go, oh, Rob, you hide behind the keyboard. Why don't you face Suboor? It's like blah, 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 butthurt. You know, you've heard some of the comments here. It's all good. So let me address this right now, here and now. I consider Suboor to be a dishonest, disingenuous hypocrite who acted like a child this past Sunday. So if he wants to come and speak to me with a childlike psychology, I'm not saying he's childlike intellect, I'm saying childlike psychology, then I have some conditions for him to speak to me, and here they are. So I'm telling you what this is, so that I'm sure this will get back to him. So if he wants to approach me in Speaker's Corner, I'm not approaching him. He's shown through his actions that he's not somebody that can have an intellectually honest discussion, at least with me. And so here are my conditions. Number one, we deal with a particular topic, not a person, because someone who does not have an answer on the spot, it does not mean that there is not an answer, and it does not reflect on others of a particular group. I could easily go to anybody in Speaker's Corner, ask them a question, see that they don't have an answer, go, oh, you Muslims, you're all the same, you're all idiots, you're all ignoramuses, you're all a bunch of sheep. I wonder who actually did say that. Was it me? I think not. And again, at the bottom of my link there, you can see the video. I'll post it in the chat, and everybody can go watch it again for those who haven't. Number two, he produces evidence where he says, I intentionally confuse people with my nonsense, or he publicly retracts that comment and apologizes. If you go look at my video, he made a very specific claim that I come down to Speaker's Corner to confuse people with my nonsense, quote unquote. So if he produces evidence that I will agree with, then that claim stands. If it doesn't, I want him to publicly apologize to me on camera and retract the claim. And number three, and most important of all of this, is that he publicly retracts and apologizes for the dishonest claims of the fitra, where he was refuted by Essence of Thought at a minimum, and possibly some other people, but I know for a fact it was Essence of Thought, at least 3 years ago. And he's continued to spout this in our conversation. So all the claims made about the fitra were refuted. These things are undeniable. There's no like, oh, it might be like the universe where it could be one way or the other. It's been done and dusted. It's been buried. And he came back and said the same things there. All of this is available in my response video, which is the link there. I will actually see if I can copy this link, and you can go put it into the chat so you can watch it again. Again, this is only for people who care about what's true. If you don't care about what's true, please don't bother. I have no problem with you not wanting to do that. So those are some of the main things. And by the way, so somebody else in the comments, Rob, you wouldn't do this for somebody else. Well, here you go. Here's another link I'm posting into the chat. There's the other link. So if you take the link I've just posted there, at the end of this video with Darren Hamza, he turns his back. He doesn't want to speak to some Christians. I think they were actually travelers, and there was Godwin in there. And so they start jeering at him. So that's exactly the same behavior, and I would condemn that just as well. So there's another video with people who are doing the same thing to one of your Muslim brothers, and I'm saying the same thing there. That sort of behavior is not the sort of behavior that you want for an intellectual discussion at the end, regardless of how Hamza behaved. If somebody turns their back and they want to walk away, are you going to condone that behavior of those Christians? I hope not. I'm going to be consistent and say their behavior is just as bad. And so I just want to see if there's anything else here. Otherwise, I'm going to open it up and have a conversation with Stops. If you are in the comments and you want to actually join us and share your view, please, I will give you my Facebook link here, and friend me up on Facebook. And then you can, and I will give you the link to the chat itself, and then you are welcome to come in and share your views. So let me just see if I can bring that back up again. I think I've actually closed that by accident there. Recently, no, I haven't. Where is it? Just see if I can find it here. I have just lost the, where has it gone? Maybe I have actually lost it. There we go. Let me just bring it up again. So there we are. One second. So let me just give you my Facebook link here so that anybody who wants to add me as a friend on Facebook there, and I will give you the link so that you can join this discussion if you have a different point of view. So at this point, I'd like to welcome my sometimes co-host on the Gin and Tonic show and friend Stop Spamming, who has got a lot of experience in dealing with and refuting Muslim claims. So Stops, feel free to join in and give us your thoughts. I'm going to read through some of the comments, and then I'll bring that up in a moment. Or he just said actually he's popped away for a few moments, so that's fine. I'm going to look through the comments here and just see if there's anything else. So hopefully I've addressed some of, oh, there you are, you're back. You there, sir?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So any thoughts from your side on kind of what I've said? You may not have been there the whole time. I totally understand that.
No. I listen all the time. The problem with Suboor is that he's desperate. Okay, he's really scared that he is losing any kind of handle on his belief. So he is thrashing out wildly, trying to sort of impress himself by what he is doing. So he's jumping on all sorts of things, like his thing with evolution. I mean, he doesn't understand the first thing about evolution, but he goes and quote mines a couple of people using Christian apologetics, which is so fake, just to convince himself. So he's hitting himself by doing that. And the thing is that his repetitive attacks on atheists, he is obsessed with this. Now, I have talked to him personally on a one-to-one basis, on vocal, okay?
On what?
Sorry?
What did you speak to him on?
Vocally, not just typing and blah, blah, blah. No. This was on a chat where we were talking to each other, and I explained to him what an atheist is. And I told him what it is not. I explained it to him, and I have this on recording, and so I can always show this. And he will still misrepresent atheists because he is shit scared of atheists, because he can handle Christians, because then you just go 1 and 1 and 1 is 3. And and this whole thing. So there's plenty of loopholes and plenty of problems in the Bible. So they can go and focus on that. But with an atheist, he has no handle. All he has to do is justify his belief, and he can't. And this is why he is so desperate to get something, to find anything on how to handle atheists. He can't, because he knows he's wrong. He knows he can't do anything. And this is why he's going like on these crazy rants.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly enough, maybe for the viewers, I'll be a little bit more charitable than you. I know you're quite blunt and to the point, and that's great, because that's why I love having you on here, because you'll have a sometimes even more different opinion than myself, which is good. I think and that's why you're a great interlocutor to have, because you'll have a very blunt opinion on it. I'll be a bit more charitable. I don't think he's not a stupid person, let's put it that way. So he's studied some stuff. What I do think, though, it's stuff that is trying to solidify my predetermined belief. I mean, I don't want to focus on it. He's not here to do that. But what I do want, and I've made it clear, so everybody's clear now on what my position is in order to have a conversation there again. Because I've got a video, I've put it out there. I can put it in the link again. One of the videos he's having with Sari years ago, he's going, hey, raising your voice is not a way to, make your argument any better. So I'm like, well, why don't you take your own advice here? Because when Will walked away, he could have gone, do you know what, Will, how come you're walking away? Do you want to go and have that conversation? And if he's watched the other video that Mohib put up, Mohib, I think if I pronounce it correctly, and I've put a link in my channel to it, you'll see him follow Will around. And eventually at some point, Will says, hey, let's go over to the coffee shop and we can have a discussion. And so Will's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do it on camera. His intention, and this is my point, his intention is to come down there and to try and, quote, expose people. So he wants to make people look foolish so he can win a point. And it could be a psychological thing, because I think maybe, and I'm speculating, that all the area videos that you guys have refuted for the last 3 or 4 years, they haven't been able to deal with. So there's some, smarter people online. I'm not a smart person. I never claimed I am. I've got some psychological training, but I don't claim to have, intellectual abilities in many of the topics that we talk about. But I learn and I do the best I can. And because I don't have an answer, doesn't mean there isn't an answer. And it doesn't mean that there's much smarter people out there who do have answers, like the conversation, maybe we'll touch on that I had with Mohammed Hijab as well. But I wouldn't go down to, it's trivially easy for me to go down to Speaker's Corner, pick on almost any Muslim, even some of the regulars, ask them some questions, make them look foolish and go, all Muslims are like that. And so I think there is a deep dislike, if not hatred, for atheists. And it could be that because they've refuted some of his arguments over the years and so forth, and he hasn't been able to do it to them online. So maybe it's a case of come down to Speaker's Corner, shout your ass off, try and find a few atheists there. Some of us don't have knowledge on particular field. But if you watch 1 or 2 videos where he has actually come across 1 or 2 people that do know something about evolution, then he's not so loud and brash, because now somebody actually knows something about the topic. And so now we're a little bit more, not quite so in your face and I'm going to expose you, because you suddenly realize, okay, this guy does know something. So that's the dishonest approach, disingenuous approach that I'm not claiming that he doesn't know something. Obviously he knows some stuff, but I do think that it's been twisted to fit a particular narrative as well. And so that's my concern. So I want an honest, open dialogue that focuses on the issues. And if he doesn't want to do that, we're not having a discussion. End of story. So he can come to me, he can shout. I will record it every single time. I'll keep putting it up. So there's the thing. If he wants to act like an adult and he's prepared to meet my 3 conditions, then we'll have a conversation and I'll pick a topic and we'll see how well he can do with those. Otherwise, I'm not interested. He can shout, he can follow around, but he's chosen the wrong guy to try and do this with. Now, Will was quite calm and he'll walk away. I'll let it do it. I'm not going to get into violence. I don't need to. I feel like I'm on the psychological high ground. I may not be morally or intellectually superior, but I'm certainly on the psychological, I've got the high ground there. So I'm just looking for honesty and openly. And if that's not going to happen, don't bother coming to speak to me in Speaker's Corner. There are actually a number of speakers, even some of the regulars, that I'm quite happy to speak to. And I do want to say hi to Paul Williams. I think he made a comment there as well. Maybe he wants to join. I know Paul is not an advocate of free speech, so it would be interesting to hear his view. And we did speak once in Speaker's Corner some years ago on that particular topic. So there are people out there you can have a quite happy conversation. What I'm looking for is where you can have the conversation and there's not a case of like, you feel like somebody's trying to expose you. It's trivially easy, as I've said, to do that. So it's a case of, let's go out there, let's have a conversation. You know, we can disagree like I did with Polite Hamza, no problem. Everybody goes, and the comments in those videos, amazing. Complete opposite of the comments that we've obviously had in a number of these videos. Hey, great, it's good to have this again. It's great to have, like, you know, open and honest conversations again. It's refreshing. I mean, if somebody has to say that it's refreshing in Speaker's Corner, that tells you a lot about the quality or lack thereof of the conversations there. I feel there's a lot of people who come down there, and maybe some people can accuse me of that. And if you can find a video where that's the case, please tell me and I will hold my hand up. But I think there's a lot of people who come down to Speaker's Corner with the intent is we're going to make a propaganda video. We've got a little bit of YouTube celebrity status now. So we're coming down there to kind of show off a little bit. And I even put that to Muhammad Hijab, and he kind of agreed, sort of, and then he did. I had to keep reminding him, and then he went into a little bit of, okay, he's going to speak to the crowd, etc. I think it's a bit inbuilt for some of them, and so I've got to keep reminding them, hey, have a conversation with me. This is being recorded. People can listen. You don't need to speak to the crowd as if you're trying to make a point, like you're debating at a university. But here at Speaker's Corner, if you want to speak to me, speak to me. Otherwise, speak to the crowd. Get on a ladder, speak to the crowd, no problem. But you can't do both. Or if you can, I'm going to call you on it. So that's what I'm looking for. And I think the clarity I wanted to really get across here is that I'm not restricting somebody's free speech, but I am going to call out behavior that I think is not good. And other people are welcome to do the same. This is not, hey, Rob's the only one who could do this and everybody else is wrong. Again, this is just a misrepresentation. Those straw men won't work. We'll just blow them over very quickly. So that's my position. Again, feel free to say something. I'm going to just look at the comments here and see if anybody else wants to say something. And I'll just see if anybody else wants to join in. They're welcome to do that. So 1 second for me here. We'll bring in our good friend Ayub. Marshall, now take it easy, Stops, would you? He's coming in here to have a conversation. So let's look at everything. There you go, Ayub. So shout out to Answer as well and to everybody else. Thanks for all the people who are joining. There's quite a few people on here. So I do thank you. If you've got any comments, I'll try and read through them here as I go along here. You haven't had a chance to watch any of the videos yet, have you, Stops?
No, unfortunately not. Because I'm doing these, because I opened 2 new channels because my old ones were closed down. And now I'm using a different approach, using different things. So I'm redoing all the old videos and slowly I'm going to upload them.
Okay, cool. So you've still got them and you're just redoing them on a new channel. Again, if you want to at some point, let me know either on this chat or whenever when you're ready, and I'll send out the link and ask people to subscribe, because I think there's, even if you disagree, go watch Stops' videos, and if you disagree and you can bring evidence, then he'll change his mind. But you've got to bring evidence.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I'm doing now is I'm doing a very, very different approach, because I'm saying this is the Quran, this is the claim, and this is reality. So I'm using facts, okay? I'm using the Quran, I'm using ancient Arabic. So if you have a problem with that, come and talk to me. Don't sit there and say, you're an asshole and you don't know shit and blah, blah. Come and talk to me and take a look at the facts. Don't tell me you're going to screw my mother or something. Go and look at the facts. This is the way that it works. The other thing that I'm doing is now I'm looking at the Speaker's Corner, analyzing a couple of videos there. And I'm using facts. Now, the funny thing is that nobody has ever been able to show me a single error in what I am saying. Now, there have been things where I was off by, I don't know, something. Okay, so I've been more precise. I've updated that. But if anybody can show me where I'm wrong, I'll change my mind. But the thing is, if I am using the Quran, you cannot accuse me of saying, well, this is not for you. The Quran is intended only for a certain time period, only under certain circumstances. You can't do that, because if you're doing that, you're opening up to a whole host of problems. You can't do that. And then if you tell me, well, I'm not allowed to show you what Muhammad said in this instance, because then this is insulting the Prophet, or this is insulting the Quran, or this is insulting, it doesn't work like that. You cannot go and restrict the topic is free speech. And what is happening again and again and again is that people try and restrict anything that has to do with Muhammad. So you can insult Allah as much as you want to, but not Muhammad. You need to love Muhammad more than your family, more than your sister, your brother, your parents. God, he can look after himself, but Muhammad can't. Why? Why this dishonesty when it comes to free speech and Muhammad? I don't understand that. And this is why I'm calling people out now. I'm going to do the facts. I'm going to do it rational. I'm going to be very polite. I'm not going to go into any personal insults or anything like that. I'm just going to do it fact straight. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. So if anybody has a comment, go ahead. I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, no, that's good. A comment or questions in the chat here from Ahmed. I'm not sure which Ahmed, but and Ahmed. When will you and Hamza speak again? Unfortunately, we won't. He's originally from Bangladesh, but he's gone back to Saudi Arabia. So unless he comes back on holiday, he was only here for 3 weeks. He went down there. So unfortunately, we won't have another Hamza. But at least we've got, or polite Hamza, shall I say, because there's a number of Hamzas. But at least we've got what I would consider a template for an open and honest discussion, because there you don't feel like you have to try and hold your corner. You don't have to try and dodge questions. If you don't know, you say you don't know. But I do get the sense that there's people in Speaker's Corner who dodge questions, who don't want to deal with something head on. They've got to go around the houses because they don't want to be seen as wrong on camera. And I actually would be totally fine if they banned all cameras from Speaker's Corner, because I think the quality of the conversation would go up. It's become like a Hollywood production now. And mine is small. You must see some of the other kits and crews and stuff that are there now.
I've seen that. It's ridiculous.
And it shows. And so Will's going like, no, I don't want to, maybe he was wrong. Maybe he didn't feel like it, whatever the case is. I'll ask him at some point and he's entitled to his thing. But then you've got to be consistent.
Who is Will? Who is this Will?
Will's just another atheist that goes down there. Sometimes he'll speak on the ladder. Sometimes he does a bit of heckling.
Is this the slightly bigger guy with the glasses?
No. This is Redhead Will. He's an English guy. He's sort of very left wing. He's more, from what I heard on the political side, he's more sort of not Labour. Who's the other guys? The more left wing than Labour. Democrats. What do you call them? Not Social Democrats. I can't think of their name now. That's how obscure they are. The third political party. No, not the Tories. They're the Conservatives. So they But
exactly. I'm going to say Tories, Democrats. What else do you have?
We've got it's not the Democrats. Somebody will tell me in the comments, I'm sure. We've got Labour and the Conservatives. Those are our two main parties, and then we've got the third one, which is not the Democrat. It is called the Democrats, but there's another word that I'm just missing there, but it's obviously they're not that important here. But Will is more to the left, so he's the red-haired guy that sort of comes
Liberal
down.
Democrats.
Say again.
Liberal Democrats.
Liberal Democrats. That's the one. Yes, thank you.
These
Liberal
are the
Democrats.
on offer.
Yeah, they're quite. They're a much smaller party now. They've lost a lot of votes. But so but I'm consistent because there was a conversation with Hamza, and we know Darren Hamza can be quite. In your face and all that sort of stuff. But he got to a point where he's like, I'm tired of speaking to these Christians now. And he turned him back and he was going to speak to somebody else. And you can hear them jeering in the background. That's why I put the video in there, in case people think, oh, I'm just targeting Muslims or one particular Muslim. No, I'm not. And like I've clarified in what I said earlier, I'm specifically focusing on this particular individual because the claim is that he's an intellectual there. He's come there for these discussions. And then what do we see? We don't see that sort of thing. And we compare that with polite Hamza, for example, who may not be as intellectually learned or whatever the case may be, but that's the sort of conversation. And Mohammed Hijab is kind of a little bit more in the middle. He's still a bit of a showman, but you can kind of have some kind of conversation, but he does sort of go all over the show and stuff.
Yeah. Rob, somebody's saying send the link. Now, you've given instructions 50 million times. I don't know why people are still asking.
What link are they asking for? Just let them ask. Somebody else asked the question here. Did you ask Ali Dawa for the discussion with Abdullah? I was asked. Yes, I did. I recorded that short thing and I've sent that to Abdullah, so he will put that up because he asked, well, why is Ali Dawa? And so Ali Dawa did speak to me. I haven't put it on my channel, but I have sent it to Abdullah. He will, I'm sure, put that up on his channel. So Abdullah is an ex-Muslim, for those who don't know. Ali Dawa, I think, wanted to have a debate with him, and then it went backwards and forwards, and Ali Dawa then decided that Abdullah was attention-seeking, was the words he used on Sunday, and it was on the video. And so he's now blocked Abdullah, and he's not prepared to have a debate. He wanted to apparently fly him over here, all expenses paid. So obviously his YouTube channel is doing well, or he's financed in some way. And so he was happy to fly him over. Abdullah didn't want to fly over from where he is, somewhere in North America. And so he was happy to have a debate online, but then Ali Dawa decided not to do that. So I'm not going to call it a one way. I've done it, and so you will see that on Abdullah's channel at some point, hopefully. Let's just see if there's anything else here. So what anybody else is saying here. The Facebook link is in the description. Yes, so if you want to friend me on Facebook so you can join the Hangout. Then in the description of this live Hangout is my Facebook link. Add me as a friend. I'll accept that, and then I will send you the link. I'm not going to put it in the chat here in the past, as you know, and same with Titans TV. You get just trolls jumping in, and then we have to keep blocking them and kicking them out and so forth. So friend me on Facebook, or if you know somebody who knows me, ask them to ask me, and I will give you the link. I just don't want to put it out on the main chat.
And it's not weekend, so I'm on my good behavior today.
Right. Okay. So you're only let loose on the weekend. So Brother Paul is standing in a. Oh, I don't know. Okay, we won't necessarily read that. So that's where I stand. Hopefully there's some clarity. I know people are going to disagree, but I don't mind if somebody disagrees, but come with some good reasons. Don't come with ad hominems and emotional comments and stuff like that. I am getting tired, and I'm probably going to slow down on replying to comments. I just had some time today, so I went through and replied to comments and so forth. There was a lot of them that made those look very tame by comparison, as you know and we know. And clearly those are emotional, upset Muslims. And again, I'm not going to generalize it as all Muslims or even the majority. I'm going to say that there's a number of Muslims out there that, for them it feels like they think Speaker's Corner is some kind of intellectual battleground where you can go and armor up. The entire purpose is to, quote, win a debate, really bury the other person in some sense. These are the words that they use, not I do. And then they somehow think that that's victory for them. But they do not care about what's true. As long as somebody appears to be good on camera, or looks like they're being good on camera. And so a number of speakers have developed some tactics that allow them to look good on camera, and they're able to dodge incoming questions that might be difficult for them to answer. And then they've got a script where they can fire off some things at people who either don't know or, maybe they do know and they don't necessarily have an answer on the spot. So I'd love to speak to anybody, any Muslim, whoever they are, but I'm asking for intellectual honesty, looking at a particular topic and not focusing on the person. I don't think that's too much to ask, because I could do exactly the same thing if I really, as Christopher Hitchens once said, if you drop your pants. Now that might sound like an odd term when I first thought about it, but in context, it's like if you're having a discussion, you're getting a little bit heated, and he was a master of it. He says, I haven't even got my pants down yet. In other words, I haven't even got started yet. You see me in idle or in first gear. Imagine if you got into overdrive with somebody like a Hitchens. Now, anybody, I could probably get there. That's just not my style. I know it might be it might be entertaining. There are a few people who can do that, and obviously he was a master at it. You could probably do it as well, Stops. But I'm really there to have those sort of conversations. I want to dig into what do people believe and why do they believe it? Have they got like good foundational reasons for this? Is there any reason that I can latch onto that actually is in some way something that I can look into, really? That's the main thing. And oftentimes that feels like a challenge. And so going to the conversation I had with Hijab after he kind of agreed that the chicken sort of behavior wasn't great, and then he wanted to focus on Will running away, and he was so surprised that Will ran away and all this sort of stuff. And do I know why he did it? Well, no, I'm not in Will's head. How do I know why he ran away? And so I had a conversation with him. We talked a bit about cosmology and so forth, and I may have even made a mistake. I'm waiting to speak to a cosmologist friend of mine because he said that the majority of scientists believe in the Big Bang model, and in my head I've got models on my phone, so I've got various or hypotheses that are on my phone, and so I always think of the Big Bang as and Phil said, I remember him saying it was Big Bang cosmology, so that's like the umbrella term, and then underneath that you've got various models that look at how could the origin, what was the origins of the universe? Could it have been eternal? Could it have been self-caused? Was it created from something in some way or other? And so there's various models. So it may be that I've incorrectly stated that. But again, my question to him, and I was there. I was going to do a edited video because Phil went through a long conversation with Muhammad, and he explained to him why you can't come out at the speaker's corner and say actual infinites are impossible. And they talked about the Hilbert Hotel, and it was very clear there why you can't do that. I mean, I can go into it if people are interested. If not, it's not a problem. But then Muhammad came back and he was speaking to somebody. He's going, actual infinites don't exist in the real world, and the majority of scientists believe this. And I'm like, hang on a second. You had, about a month and a half ago, you had an hour and a half conversation with Phil where he explained to you exactly why you can't say that. We do not claim that actual infinites are possible or probable, but what we do say is you can't say they're impossible because David Hilbert's paper was relying on incorrect information, so his conclusion is not valid. Doesn't mean that it can't be possible, but the conclusion that he wrote based on the curvature of the universe is invalid, and so you can't go around saying, hey, actual infinites are impossible. At this moment in time, we don't know. And so then we moved on, and he got to the fitra. And so, he was talking about, because he asked me, and I know this already because I've, listened to Ozymandias Ramesses II and Alex Malpass. So he then got on to, okay, so let's talk about beliefs. Can you justify your rationality, your reason, your mathematics, your existence, and various others? And I'm going, no, you can't. They are properly basic beliefs. They are foundational. He goes, great. And so, we've got the fitra, and we consider that properly basic as well. Why? Because there's no information needed. He's obviously modified it slightly because Tortz's version is there's no information transfer. So in their mind, they're trying to sneak in the fitra without any evidence, because I asked him, what's your evidence? Because I know I'm ready for the evidence, or the supposed evidence. Because if something manifests in this world, if you're claiming that every human has got an innate fitra, then there must be some way that we can evaluate in this world using a scientific method of some kind, whether that's true or not. But he did everything possible to escape answering that question. And so he went on to try and show that science, the scientific method, rationality, etc., they can't be proven. And I was happy to grant that. You can't prove those things, not the scientific method, because that's based on some other foundations. But you can't prove science with science, obviously. And so there are certain beliefs like the laws of logic, rationality, our existence, that are considered properly basic. And the reason that they, in my view, is my understanding, the reason why they're considered properly basic is because they're self-attesting. You have to invoke them to even try and falsify them. And this is not the same with the fitra. The fitra is now just a claim. And he obviously gave a nice assertion as to why he thinks it's true. And when I asked him, why is this true? Because he didn't want to give me actual evidence. And so when we eventually got to a couple of reasons, it was because it gives explanatory power. And I'm like, you can make up anything and say it gives you explanatory power. That doesn't mean anything at all. I can invoke a metaphysical principle just like you've done. And next time I might actually do a part 2 of that, because then he got sort of sidetracked with a couple of other atheists that came in, or other people that he brought into the conversation. So it kind of went off. I would have rather had that conversation with me. I believe he's on dead end. He's got no chance. It's not like some arguments where you go, you know what, we don't know for sure. I mean, it's most probably this, most probably that. With this argument, he just doesn't have a hope. And this is not from me because I'm so smart, but I've listened to some extremely smart people. And we're all in the same boat, just for anybody who thinks they're going to go and try this argument. We're all in the same boat. None of us can justify our reasoning or our existence, because we need to appeal to it. And in order to do that, we have to invoke some of these properly basic beliefs. That's not the case with the fitra. So what's happening there is it's just been inserted. And so what he tried to do was go, hey, science and all these other things, you can't prove them. Hey, but you can't prove the fitra either. So he was going from a proof level. I'm going, hang on a sec, that doesn't work the same way. Because you can invoke any other explanation to do the same thing or to answer some question and go, hey, it's a properly basic belief. So they haven't really got a chance with this, but he did try, and unfortunately we didn't get down to it. I know he probably wouldn't have accepted it, but I was surprised that he used it of all people, because he's got a little bit of psychology, philosophical training, from what I understand. And so,
really?
Well, he claims he learned some philosophy.
I think he's bullshitting. I'm 100% sure he's bullshitting. He's just throwing words around, and I'm sure he doesn't even understand them himself. The way that he brings them across, because I watched this segment with Phil, when he was trying to get Phil into a philosophical discussion, he thinks the same way as Hamza Tsotsis, for example. He also does this, using, as soon as they don't know what it is, they start using the word philosophical, because they know that that's when people start getting careful, and there's a lot of things that you cannot prove or you cannot go and ascertain when you are using the word philosophical. And this is what exactly he is doing. I saw him do that when Phil was talking about cosmology. He tried to sidetrack him into philosophy, and it didn't work. So yes, I think this is just a cop-out. This is just a detraction from the, or is it distraction? Just detraction.
Yes,
he's
distraction.
Trying to detract from this, to go on a different course, so that he doesn't have to go into the facts anymore, because then he can waffle. Because in come on, I mean, let's face it, in philosophy you can waffle, and this is exactly what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I watched that. I've listened to it multiple times, and I actually edited it for my own, for me to listen to, because I wanted to understand what Phil was saying, and so I listened to it on audio, and I took out a lot of what Mohammed Hijab was saying, because you're right, and Phil was very clear. this is completely irrelevant going into these philosophical. No, it's not irrelevant, because if you haven't got a foundation, how can you even talk about this? The fact is that while we can't prove the foundation of science, it works. And so we assume that it works, and it works reliably every single time. So from a philosophical position, can we absolutely justify it? No. Does that stop us using it? No. Does it work? Yes. And does it self-correct itself? Yes. So that's all we need. So it's nice. And I've always said, or I haven't always said, but I've said more recently, that I think theists generally only have got philosophical answers left. There's nothing from science that they can invoke, because otherwise it becomes very...
It's philosophical answers. It's not even that.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that's all you can use, because the metaphysical we can't outside of the universe anyway. We can't use the scientific method.
That's all that's left. Yeah,
that's the last refuge, really, because anything else, like let's say we go to the beginning of the universe, they're quite happy to accept the inflationary model, because the inflationary model winds the clock back to a point that's infinitely small, dense, hot, curvature, pressure, temperature, everything else. But if you actually extend it and you were prepared to accept what the cosmologists say, then that predicts a multiverse. And so whatever cosmological argument you're going to want to use from scientists, not one of them go, hey, do you know what? The answer to this is a metaphysical entity that could be the only answer is the creator. None of them do this. And so they will take the argument part way, and then they'll ditch the rest of it.
Yeah, but the problem is that they will go into all like 30-year-old arguments, because they're still stuck on the singularity. And we've long progressed from this. They still see this infinitely small dot, and they love this word infinite, and this is what they're stuck on. And they will go and propagate this again and again and again. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell them, listen, this is outdated. This is like talking, Aristotelian vocabulary here. You can't use it.
Yeah. I've got a question here. Did you and Hijab ever get to properly discussing the fitra, human nature? Ahmed, no, we didn't. As you can see in the 1-hour video there, he sort of got distracted. Then he went into trying to talk about science and, put on a bit of a show. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have that conversation alone with him and not have him go into long stories. I can't stop him doing that, but it's what I will do is start to interrupt a little bit more, because I want to get to the meat of it. And he's telling me some things that I already know. I don't claim to be a philosopher, but there's certain of these things that I have looked into. So if I don't know something, I'll say, hang on a moment, what are you talking about? Like when he asked me incorrigible, I kind of remembered it, but I wasn't prepared to go, hey, I know what it means, and pretend I do when I don't. I'd heard the word and I kind of knew there was something about unchanging type of a thing, but I wasn't entirely sure. So I said to him, no, I've heard the word, but I can't remember. So I'm not going to pretend that I know something or pretend that I remember when I don't. And so, no, we didn't get to, but I might do a part 2, because I do think that that's, from my point of view, that's a very, very weak argument, that to try and shoehorn it in as a properly basic belief. Now, if you had some evidence for it, we could talk about that. But the evidence, when Suboor and I had the conversation, I researched it. That evidence has been utterly buried. It's done. It's refuted. The people, the researchers, and the tribe in the Amazon. This is all we need to falsify it from a scientific point of view. So for me, the fitra claim just doesn't stack up. So now the only option is to try and bring it in from a metaphysical, philosophical point of view. And I'm quite clear on that they've got no chance. And of course, 1 or 2 people said, hey, if you're interested, and I pointed them to Ozymandias Ramesses II. For those of you who are interested, type in Ozymandias Ramesses II. He's a philosopher. We've had him on the show here a couple of months back. He's very good. He's quite wordy, but he's done a couple of the ones where he's straight to camera, and so he's being a bit more concise, and that will give you some good ideas, because he's dealt with all of this. He's really good with this, because he's dealt with a lot of the presuppositional arguments.
And I killed this 6 or 7 years ago. I've done this again and again and again. I've done the fitra I don't know how many times. Why should anyone talk about something that does not exist? I don't understand it. How can you talk about this innate belief, this fitra? It does not exist. It's not there. How many times do you want to talk about it? I don't understand why people still insist on doing that. Why can't they go and research this a little bit? Why can't they go and look themselves? Why do they need to be told every single week? Why does every week somebody come up and say, well, I haven't heard this yet. You need to explain the fitra again. But I haven't heard this. You need to explain why it is wrong again. Why do we need to do this every single week? I don't understand it. This is my old argument. If I go and talk about Islam, I go learn, I study, I do a lot of things. I talk to people, I ask, I try to falsify my own opinions. I go and read like crazy before I even dare go and voice my opinion on this. Why is it that I am intellectually capable of doing that? And why am I intellectually honest to go and research and look at the claims, look at the different arguments, look at what has already been said about this? And Muslims can simply waltz in here and say, oh, you have to explain to me why fitra is wrong. Fuck you. Go and learn the stuff. Go and research. Go and read how many times the fitra has been debunked. It's been ridiculed. It does not exist. Stop coming with the same stupid stuff. Why aren't you embarrassed about this stuff? I don't understand this.
I think it's because it's a foundational claim, and so foundational claim needs to be held on to at all costs. And so there's a bit of desperation to try and find a way to resurrect this, because without that, the innate belief in a God, some of the other, I'd have to go and look at what other arguments hang on this, but it's not just a case of, oh, let that go and everything else is still fine. I think that's part of a foundational belief. Obviously, apparently, and you would know better than me, that it says something about that in the Quran. It obviously doesn't use those words.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in the Quran which don't make sense. Come on. I mean, if you take it, you could take any sentence in the Quran and you could show it does not make sense. This also does not make sense. So what are you going to do? Are you going to go through every single sentence now in the Quran and then ask me about it again? And then every of the 1.2 or 1.5 or how many ever billion Muslims are going to come to me and ask me the same bloody question over and over? Come on, that's why we have research. That's why we have databases, we have encyclopedias, we have blogs, we have all sorts of things where you can look these things up. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and the last refuge, I think, when I hear it is, could those things be wrong? And it's the moment you hear that, so they're looking for absolute certainty, which again, Muhammad Hijab attempted to use in our discussion as well, and I had to correct him on that. So they're looking for absolute certainty. So when we say no, it's possible that any of these things that we believe we know could be wrong, that gives sort of a backdoor for, okay, well, now we can still kind of feel like, the God claim is still possible, or probable or whatever, because you guys don't know for sure. And of course, our view is, well, you guys don't know either, but you're claiming to know. And I think that's the big difference. Somebody asked me,
how many times are you supposed to now go and challenge Suboor? I see in the chat now, somebody says, well, why don't you go and chat Suboor again? Why? Why do you want to go to chat to a guy who is incorrigible, who will not learn, who will refuse to take anything on board if it is not his opinion? It's stupid.
Rob completely destroyed Suboor. Well, Ahmed, it depends what you mean by destroyed. If that, from my point of view, I'm sorry to tell you this, but from my point of view, that's like a childlike psychology. If in fact everything he said was in fact true, then you could say he's if you want to even say he's won the argument, that's fine. But you could say then he's presented information that is factually correct. Now, if you go watch my response videos, which I dare you to do, since you're daring me to have a conversation, I dare you to go watch both of my response videos. You will see, in fact, that he did not produce facts. What he did do very well is spout claims. And it took me quite a bit of time, and I thank the people that helped me do that, because it could have taken much longer. And so most, if not all of them, at least most of them, are either half correct or completely false. And so, and it wasn't just that. If that was the one thing, that was it. And it's been displayed against this Sunday. And I know you probably don't care what's true, Ahmed, from what you're saying. But I do care what's true, and I want to have a conversation with it. An honest and open interlocutor, not somebody who's there to try and expose somebody, because I can do that too, and that's not my way, and I'm not going to accept that. So I'm setting my standards at Speaker's Corner. Other people can do whatever they want. I'm not stopping them doing whatever they want to do. But if they want to speak to me, they need to come to me, in particular Suboor, meet my 3 conditions, and then we can potentially have a conversation. But if he's not going to, and he's going to act like a child.
Just wait a second. Hamid is going on like this. Hamid, you're a liar. I'm calling you out. I'm saying you are a liar. Okay? Now prove me wrong. Bring one single point where Suboor killed, in any argument. Just bring one argument where Suboor killed Rob. Go. Sorry, Rob.
No problems. Yeah, just bring some facts where he was right and I was wrong. And I'm happy to admit it here on the show. But again, go watch my response video. I researched almost all the claims. There's probably a few small things that I missed that weren't as important. I mean, I could have done it for another year, I suppose, but I had to choose what point to do it at. Somebody's asking, Rob, can you talk about the whole rationality thing? I think I just have, but I'll briefly go over it again. So the claim from the theists is that atheists or non-believers or naturalists, there's sometimes a confusion between atheism and naturalism or non-belief, because an atheist could be a naturalist, which means all they believe is the natural world, which is most probably my view. I'm not 100% set in that, but that means anything within the universe I would class as natural. So if we found out that ghosts in fact were real, then that would be a now explained natural phenomenon. At the moment, it's an unexplained natural phenomenon. So a supernatural phenomenon would be something outside of this universe. However, something outside this universe could in some way interact with this universe. And the moment it does that, in principle, we could look at it from a scientific point of view. Now, the whole rationality thing goes into, well, you guys don't have a basis for rationality in the sense that you can't explain how it came about in the natural world, and you can't explain it from a philosophical point of view, which was Hijab's entire thing. So we get down to rationality is a properly basic belief. In other words, we have to invoke our rationality and reason in order to try and falsify it. When I open my mouth, rationality is based on laws of logic as one thing among other things. And I have to invoke these. I can't prove them because when I open my mouth, I am in fact proving them because I am using them and I can't not use them. So it becomes a circle. So philosophers over time there's other words for it, but more recently it's become known as a properly basic belief, or as I heard and I prefer, self-attesting beliefs. So something is true because by even trying to invoke it, to falsify it, you have to make use of it. And that sort of circle is as Andy kind of said, I don't like it, but virtuous circle. So that becomes like a virtuous circle. And all philosophers agree on these. There's no way to prove them, so we assume them. And so theists and atheists are both in the same position. We're both assuming certain axiomatic, properly basic beliefs. But a theist is now going, hang on a moment, I can appeal outside of nature. I can appeal to my God. And in my worldview, I can say my God has given me these axiomatic self-attesting beliefs. You atheists have got nothing to appeal to. But as you saw when I spoke to Hijab from the philosophical point of view, it's an assertion. I could just as easily say the following. The quantum vacuum has produced rationality in the sense that when this universe sprang forth from the quantum vacuum with the laws of physics, dark matter, dark energy, neutrinos, etc., at a certain point, after about 13.72 billion years on a certain planet at a certain time with a certain creature, rationality came into existence through the evolution of the brain. At a certain point in time, the brain was evolved enough, and through naturalistic means, consciousness sprang in, or rationality via consciousness, because you can't separate them. You need to have a conscious agent. So I still do agree with that part of it. And of course, Suboor wanted to make fun of that. But of course, Tsortzis actually talks about it. So he actually conflicted with his own person there. But so consciousness sprang forth and rationality was built on top of consciousness. So I have now produced for you a naturalistic explanation. I have just asserted that that's the case. And I will consider that a properly basic belief. What the theist does is go, hey, God does that. That's a properly basic. Now, neither of us can prove this. I wouldn't make that claim because I don't know that it's true. I'm just making up a story. And as far as I'm concerned, the theists are doing exactly the same. They're making up a story external to rationality and saying, hey, this explains it. No, all it does is you've given an explanation. You've just given an assertion, which some people might call an explanation. Now you need to justify that or show that that's true. And Muhammad's hijab, the best he could do is say, oh, it's an explanation. And as I've said, I've just given you an explanation from the quantum vacuum that explains consciousness or rationality as well. And so prove me wrong. I can't prove that God didn't do it, but it's also possible that there is a God outside there that didn't give us rationality. In other words, there's a God. There could be a God out there outside of the universe, if you want to use that sort of term, or that's the term I'd normally just use. And he could have produced this universe and not infused rationality into it. It just happened naturally. You can't prove that's not the case. You can assert it if you like, because it sounds good to you, but you need to demonstrate it's true. And the same would be for my claim as well. So they don't get out of this by just, it sounds good. To people who don't know this argument, it sounds very good. Oh, he's given a reason. No, he hasn't given a reason. He's made an assertion which he has not backed up in any way. And what Hijab tried to do was undermine science and the other properly basic beliefs in order to sneak it in. But he's not going to, because I know this argument or a version of it, He's not going to be able to get away with that with me. But other people might go, yeah, wow, okay, you've actually given an explanation and I haven't got one. And they might walk away going, well, do you know what? The theists have got one. But no, again, this is all learning. I didn't know this a year ago. And so I've learned it from smart people out there. If you go and listen to them, there's no way around this. And so that's the answer to your rationality thing there. Let's just see if there's anything else here. Listening to Rob on the rebound. Hey, no problem, Ahmed. You are entitled to your opinion. We all have them. I would consider yours subjective. And many of the opinions out there, I'm fine with everybody having an opinion. Nobody is prevented from having an opinion. But I will use Hitchens' razor, which is anything that can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So I will neatly use Hitchens' razor unless you can produce some evidence. So you obviously entitled to it. I don't expect Muslims or anybody else to agree with me necessarily. But if you're going to disagree, then give me good reasons that I can evaluate. Otherwise, it's just your subjective opinion, which you are entitled to, but it doesn't hold any weight with me. I'll have to agree with you on that one. Godwin won't threaten you with violence. Yeah, that's true. Godwin won't threaten you with violence. He will laugh at you and so forth, but he won't threaten violence. That's true. Which brings me on to a slightly other topic there. There was another video that came out recently with Abu Hamid. Obviously, so he did an apology, which I have accepted. I attempt to, and people might go, oh, Rob, you're naive, you're wrong, whatever. And we'll see. Here's my position. Hamid came over towards the end of the day after I'd had the discussion with hijab, and he came over and he apologized for making unfounded claims. So we've got that on the video with content over everything, and I put up the short bit there. I did notice in the comments that Big Bro didn't feel like the apology was right, and maybe Sora didn't, and other people didn't either, and they thought it wasn't sincere. I personally don't have a reason necessarily at this moment in time to suggest that, so I'm going to take him on his word. But here's the good thing from my point of view. He's made the apology. We've had a conversation, if you go and watch the entire thing, where I've made very clear that from my point of view and many other people, we are not going to respect people's feelings when we are talking about factual matters. So if somebody wants to come and say something about the Prophet, they are free to say it. Now, I'm not necessarily going to use that language myself, but I could if somebody asked me. But they are free to do so. And it's the same if somebody wants to come and be a racist. Now, I do want to make a distinction. There is a distinction between being a racist and criticizing an ideology. So there is a distinction to be made. However, in Speaker's Corner, if somebody wants to come there and shout, racist slurs at people, they can do that. We will point out that they are racist. Now, if you want to point out that other people who are criticizing the Muhammad are slanderous, good luck with that. You can try and twist that, because I wanted to go back to that, which is the whole thing about slander, which is the action or crime of making a false spoken statement damaging to a person's reputation. Now, I want somebody to attempt to prove to me how this is damaging to Muhammad's reputation, since he'd be dead for 1400 years. So you're going to have a mountain to climb here, and maybe Brother Paul is on here, and he can come up with some kind of cogent argument that if in fact the claims that are being made, which I know Stops you wouldn't agree with, that in fact, no, she wasn't 9, she was 18, or she was 15, or whatever the case is. And because I had a long conversation with somebody last night, actually, who presented a position that, no, those are weak hadiths because it's only a single chain of narration, and so we shouldn't rely so heavily on them. A lot of Muslims do. Now, again, different Muslims, have got different views on certain things. But A, you'd have to prove that it absolutely wasn't the case. And B, if you're going to go with a slanderous thing, I would love to see somebody try this, show how there's damage to his reputation. He's been dead for 1400 years, and take it to court and try it out. I'm actually, I'd love to see that. But again, who knows, with the legal system the way it is, and from my point of view, them wanting, the legal system is allowing more and more hate speech to be classified as hate speech and so forth, that we could get to a point where actually criticizing the Prophet or something else does become a hate crime. I mean, I rue the day that happens, but you never know. If people keep on with this, you never know. There might be enough liberal people who will just hold their hands up and, just surrender to this. I won't allow that if I can possibly help it, because it's a slippery slope we'll never get past. And they haven't proven that they are something special that needs to happen for. And the other point is, of course, it's inconceivable to me, and that's obviously my worldview, how people could love somebody who's been dead 1400 years, more than the parents, the people that fed them, that loved them, that clothed them, that brought them into this world, that you could possibly love another human being who you don't even know, you've never met with, we assume that he existed, just from my point of view, the psychology that goes on in the mind is just beyond my understanding, to be honest. I understand people do it, but I can't understand the psychological processes going on in somebody's brain that they could say that. So getting back to Hamid, he's made the apology to me, which I've accepted. Big Bro's not accepted an apology. I did notice, which was concerning, that Hamid then basically said, well, the fact that you're not accepting my apology, I'm not going to be walking around looking for you necessarily or come and talk to you, but if I hear you slandering the prophet, then I'm going to come and stand in front of you, sir, and I'm going to be slightly different. So to me, I think you can certainly read something into that. It's a comment. I will actually bring that up so that people don't think I'm just making stuff up. That was a bit of a concern. There we go. Let me see if I can bring that up.
Come on, he's a troll. Just ignore this Kaka guy.
So again, which guy? Oh, you mean
ignore the Kaka guy? He's
somebody
a
on the chat, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let me just add this in here so I can see this. So, this is a bit concerning. As I say, I have accepted the apology. And here's the other thing that I was going to say, and I kind of went off a little bit on it. If somebody makes an apology, then the time will tell whether that's sincere, because this stuff is all on camera now, so in some respects the cameras are good, and others it's not. So somebody's made an apology. Let's see if they stick with it. Because if you make an apology and then you go right back to doing what you were doing, then I think any rational, honest person is going to go, that wasn't an apology. Now, he may not do it to me, but if he acts in a way that's not in accordance with, whatever the case is, then that's a concern. So I'm going to share this here and present this to everybody, because it's a free comment. So by the way, this is on a particular video, but just so you don't have to go look at it. So this is Abu Hamid, Big Bro Heavyweight. There's a saying, keep repeating a lie to the people and it becomes a fact eventually. I know now what kind of snake you really are. If you take the word Uncle Tom to be a racist word on the same level as the N word, fair enough, but many black people don't. Nevertheless, I was man enough to at least have the decency to apologize in order to close the door on any doubts within the minds of anybody who was offended by that statement. It's very clear to me and everybody else to see what kind of a sinister game you're playing, sirs. So on that note, I will have to declare to everybody that we are hereby back to square one again. Although I personally will not approach you again, however, if I hear that certain slanderous remarks are being made against our prophet, peace be upon him, you will find me again standing in front of you, dear sir, although it will be in a very different manner than from the last time. All the best, and may Allah guide you. Amen. There we have that comment. I mean, obviously, I will leave that to fair-minded viewers as to what their views is on that. But no, that wasn't directed at me necessarily.
So stupid.
But there is a comment, and this was directly after his apology. When Big, there's a long comment there by Big Bro, basically going, "I don't accept your apology. I think you're insincere, etc., etc." And so this was a response to that.
Yeah, but listen to this. Although it will be in a very different manner than from the last time, this is like, you need to do this or else. This is so pathetic.
Anyway, as I say, that's a bit of a concern for me. But again, my apology to me for what he said to me personally, I've accepted. We will see what happens in the future, and if something happens again, then obviously that will reflect on his apology to me. But he and Big Bro need to sort some of those things out. But that is a rather sinister comment. Were that made to me, I would be thinking about what that would mean. And I, again, obviously he's trying to be careful there, but also trying not to be careful. So it's a kind of a bit of both. But this is the problem. And again, this goes back to free speech, which is part of what this entire Hangout is about. And I've had a 25-minute conversation, or 23 minutes, or whatever it is, with Hamid. And he kind of understood. Because I said on the video, if you go and watch the video and content over everything, I said, Sarah is your biggest gift. And there was Mohammed Taweed, I think his name is, from Guidance Avenue, was standing next to him with a camera. He went, ha, ha, and off he walked, and he laughed. And I said, you'll hear me on camera saying, look, he just laughed and walked away. And Hamid stood there, and I said, now let me tell you why Sarah is your biggest gift. And I went on to proceed to explain to him what I consider a more advanced level of psychological thinking and so forth. And he kind of agreed in some sense, but then he was like, no, we've got to, so he kind of got the point. I think it's hard not to get the point. And he kind of got it, but then he was like, he still wanted to revert back to, no, there's slander and that's not permissible. And I think I was quite clear that, whatever speech it is, slanderous or not, in Speaker's Corner, from my point of view, is permissible. And you deal with slanderous or other sort of speech with facts if you've got them, and you can override them. If you've got the facts, you've got nothing to fear. If you don't have the facts, I can understand.
Okay, but what are the facts? How do you establish facts?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not for us to do, is it? I mean, if Sarah or Big Bro or whoever it may be, or anybody is saying, do you know what, he married 9-year-old Aisha, and from our point of view, that's unacceptable. They would have to go. And I said to him as well, the other point is, I said, one part of this is menstruation. The other part is consent. And we know from psychological testing, again, this is not in dispute today. Now, if you want to claim that was only for the 7th century, be my guest. Because I think that's the biggest thing that if Muslims just did one thing and they gave up this whole thing, that this Quran is for all people of all time, 90% of these conversations would disappear tomorrow. Now we'd be just checking whether, in fact, this God is real or whatever the case is. But we wouldn't be going, hey, this is examples that we need to follow today. And so if they gave that claim up, we wouldn't, as long as they're going to hold on to that claim, and I would suggest desperately, then we're always going to have these conversations. They're not going to go away. And I know their scholars are desperately trying to make them fit with Western values, but it's just not seeming to work very well.
What about changing it around? How about asking questions? What if you were to come to a Muslim and say, listen, do you think that it is acceptable today in the 21st century in the UK, in France, in Ireland, or wherever, that a 54-year-old man goes and marries a 6-year-old girl? Do you think that that is appropriate today, in today's society, in today's environment? And I think that needs to get a person thinking, because he will be, the knee-jerk reaction will be to go and say, yes, of course, because Muhammad did it. But on the other hand, he has to think about whether an old man should marry a child, and that is appropriate and acceptable in today's society, today's culture here in Europe. And this is the question that I want to ask people. Ask a question. The same way as I ask a question, do you think that slavery is appropriate today in today's society? If there were to be slavery in the Quran, would you say the Quran is acceptable for today's society, in today's world, in today's culture here in Europe? So I think we should be asking more questions, because Rob and I were talking about how do you approach Muslims, and I think asking questions is a much better approach than calling them out and doing all sorts of confrontative things. I think that's a better approach.
Yes, from a psychological point of view, it is a better approach. You're absolutely right. Those questions have been asked, and there have been responses like, no, I wouldn't do that, but Muhammad and knew best, and Aisha was special, and so there are sort of responses to that sort of question.
But then you're not like Muhammad. Then you are saying this is not an idol and not a role model, and not somebody to look up to today, in today's environment, today's culture, in today's society, in the 21st century in Europe.
Yes, I think so. From the child marriage point of view, I think a lot of Muslims are tending to go that route, in the sense of like, no, I wouldn't do that personally, but it was okay for Muhammad at the time, but actually she was older. So I think what they are pressing for is that she's much older, and that would be okay. So if you married a 17 or 18-year-old today, that would be okay. That would be their ideal. To get out of this would be to try and get everybody to believe that she was 18, and that means that it is okay today. That's what that would be their cherry on the cake type of thing. But that
is it really. Is it really okay for a 50-year-old man or a 54-year-old man to marry a 17-year-old girl? That's okay.
I don't know. I'm not saying necessarily it could be. It depends. I wouldn't
exactly
allow that personally, but I'm not a Muslim as well. So, but again, how would we? Okay, so here's a question for you, Stops. How would we just say no? That's not okay. What would be our position?
My position would be, would I go and tell my daughter, who is 16 or 17, to go and marry a 54-year-old man?
Okay, but no, let's say 18, because that would, like I said, let's go with the ideal. If they could get it to 18 somehow by some kind of...
Would I want my 18-year-old daughter to go and marry a 54-year-old man? No, I would not. Come on. But I mean, just check it out. By the time that they have kids, by the time that she's a mature, grown woman at the age of 30... He's going to pay off. So she is giving the best years of her life to somebody who's got maybe 2, 3, or maybe even 10 years left. And then what? What is she going to do at the age of 30 if he's going to die? Then what? Is it going to be like really easy for a 30-year-old woman, maybe with 2 or 3 children, to go and find another partner? It's not that easy. Let's be realistic. Today's society is brutal, so it is going to be difficult. So would I go and tell my daughter at the age of 18, go and find a 54-year-old man? No, I'm sorry, I would not, even if she is 18. Even though she is legally able to do that, I would not advise her to do that.
No, okay, but let's put aside advising. It's not as if, because that wouldn't be the argument necessarily.
But that's the argument. That's what Abu Bakr did. This is exactly the point. Muhammad went to him and said, listen, I need your child because I've been dreaming about her in my dreams ever since she was a baby. And Abu Bakr said, yeah, but you are Muhammad, and this is too much of an honor. But actually, she's already been promised to somebody else. We'll go and cancel. I mean, look at the whole interaction that you get from the hadith between Abu Bakr, Muhammad, and between Aisha and what the other people are saying about this. This is exactly what it is.
Okay, I think that's definitely a discussion we could have. What I'm actually going to do now, stay on, people. I'm going to end the Hangout, the official Hangout now, and we'll carry on with an after show for a while, and we'll just have further discussions. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I hope I've clarified my views, certainly in the beginning part of this Hangout, and so I will keep this on. It's one of the rare Hangouts which I'll probably keep online in the sense of public for those people who want to watch. So thank you all for joining in, and if there's responses, if you want to email me and you think that doing a Hangout sort of once a week maybe, or once every couple of weeks, and you've got a couple of topics you want, or if you've got some Muslims that want to have a conversation online, email me on speakerscorneruk@gmail.com, which is my YouTube one, or friend me on Facebook, and we can have conversations, because that's what we want. Obviously, we've got the Gin and Tonic show as well, so that's where we normally have shows, but I don't mind doing it on this channel every so often. So thank you very much, and we will close off this Hangout now.